World War II is considered by many to be the most important event of the 20th century. In fact, some historians argue that the war's origins can be traced back to the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I. So what led to this catastrophic global conflict? How did a continent go from armistice to another world war? Welcome to my channel. Today we are answering the extraordinary. In 1914, the world changed forever. The Great War later called World War I threw nations into chaos, and at the center of it all was Germany. The spark came when Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and soon alliances dragged the whole world in. Germany stood with Austria-Hungary, while France, Britain, and Russia opposed them. Germany launched the Schlieffen Plan, invading Belgium to reach France quickly. But instead of victory, the Western Front turned into endless trenches mud, blood, and barbed wire. Millions of soldiers died in battles like Verdun and the Somme. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Germany fought Russia, winning great victories, but spreading itself thin. By 1918, Germany was exhausted. The people were starving, the army was broken, and revolution spread across the nation. On November 11, 1918, Germany surrendered. The Treaty of Versailles followed, blaming Germany for the war and demanding crushing reparations. World War I destroyed empires and killed millions. For Germany, it was humiliation and hardship. But it was only the beginning, because within 20 years, Germany would rise again for an even greater war. To understand how one generation went from total defeat to total war, we have to look at the aftermath of World War I. The first thing to understand is that Germany lost. There is no way to sugarcoat it. We were blamed for the war and had to pay reparations. Also, there was a military occupation of these regions right here. This was a huge blow to German pride. However, not all was lost. Even though the monarchy was gone and Germany was now a republic, Germany still had its colonies. The Germans lost some of them, but most remained intact. Additionally, Germany still had its place as a great power in Europe. Or so they thought. You see, the victorious powers began a process known as the division of the spoils. Now, if you've ever played Risk and conquered an opponent, you know that once you take their territories, you get their bonus cards. Well, that's exactly what was happening here. Each victorious power got something out of the deal. Great Britain gained additional territories around the world. France gained Alsace-Lorraine back. Russia got these territories, which were mainly populated by Russians. Then there was Italy. You see, Italy had switched sides and joined the victorious powers late in the war, and so they received these territories. Finally, there was Germany's biggest rival, Japan. After fighting and winning a war against Russia, Japan was given half of Sakhalin Island and all of the Russian territories in the Pacific. These territorial changes didn't end up working out too well for any of these countries. But that's a topic for another time. The point is that the victorious powers were all expanding their empires, but Germany wasn't. Now, Germany felt like they got the short end of the stick, but they accepted the terms of the treaty. They knew they could not win a war against the entire continent. Still, Germany wanted more. If you remember, just a few years prior, Germany was a major player in European politics. And now, they were being forced to sign a document that said that they started the war. All of this resentment built up until one man came along who was willing to exploit it. His name was Adolf Hitler. Hitler was born in Austria, but he moved to Germany and worked his way up the ranks of the Nazi Party. He promised the Germans that he would undo the mistakes of Versailles. Boy, did he deliver. Hitler reversed the terms of the treaty bit by bit. First, he remilitarized the Rhineland, which was supposed to be demilitarized. Then he annexed Austria without firing a single shot. Next, he took Czechoslovakia, which was supposed to be independent according to the treaty. The rest of Europe watched in disbelief as Hitler broke the rules and no one did anything. Great Britain and France had suffered through a horrible war and were tired of fighting. Plus, they hoped that Hitler would stop at Czechoslovakia. But Hitler didn't stop. On September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. Finally, the French and British had enough. On September 3rd, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany. Once again, alliances were triggered. The Soviet Union had formed a non-aggression pact with Germany, so Stalin didn't interfere in the beginning of the war. Germany was ready for this war. They had a strong military with lots of tanks and planes. They also had blitzkrieg tactics, which translated into lightning-fast attacks. The French and British couldn't stop the Germans. Within 2 weeks, France had fallen. Soon, all of Western Europe was under German control. But Hitler didn't stop. Remember, the Germans had suffered greatly during World War I, especially in the East. The war on the Eastern Front had been brutal and unforgiving. Now Hitler wanted revenge. He invaded the Soviet Union. At first, the Germans were successful. Their blitzkrieg tactics worked perfectly on the Soviets. By 1941, Germany controlled much of the Soviet Union. But then something unexpected happened. The winter. It was cold, and the Germans weren't prepared for it. Soviets used the harsh weather to regroup and fight back. With the help of the British and Americans, the Soviets pushed the Germans back. By 1945, the Soviets had taken Berlin, and Hitler was dead. Germany had lost again, but this time it was different. Most of Germany was destroyed. Cities were in ruins. The economy was shattered, and millions of Germans were dead. The Germans had fought on 2 fronts and lost both. Not only that, but they had made powerful enemies in the process. During the war, Germany and Italy had formed an alliance with Japan, and all 3 powers had been fighting against the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. And these 3 powers were not about to forgive Germany. This time, the Germans were completely defeated. Germany had to surrender unconditionally, and before the end of the war, the Americans had dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. So everyone knew that there was no chance of winning the next war. Unlike after World War I, Germany had no colonies left. In fact, they were losing territory. The Germans had high hopes of restoring their country after World War I. But after World War II, they just wanted to rebuild. Still, the post-World War II era was a time of hope for the Germans. After all, they had just defeated the Nazis and established a new government based on democracy. Germany became divided between the victorious powers. The French occupied the southwest, the British occupied the northwest, the Americans occupied the southwest, and the Soviets occupied the east. This division extended to Berlin as well. The Americans, British, and French zones were eventually merged into one, while the Soviets held their zone tightly. The Germans in the West were able to hold free elections, which led to the creation of the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany. The Soviets, however, didn't trust the Germans. They had seen how easily the Germans accepted Hitler and Nazism, so the Soviets kept their zone under tight control. Eventually, the Soviets withdrew from the north and allowed the creation of the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany. Germany was now divided. Between communism and democracy, the Germans in the West lived very differently than those in the East. Over time, a wall was built between the 2 Germanys, dividing families and friends. West Germany was doing quite well economically, thanks to the Marshall Plan. But East Germany lagged behind. So many young Germans decided to flee to the West. By the late 1960s, over 3 million people had fled from East to West. The communist government tried everything to stop the flow, but nothing worked. The situation was becoming embarrassing for the communists, so they decided to take drastic measures. On August 13, 1961, East Germany began building a wall around West Berlin. The Berlin Wall became a symbol of the Cold War. Every night, people gathered around it, hoping to cross over. Many tried, and some succeeded, but most were caught. The construction of the wall symbolizes the division of Germany. While the country was united, it was divided between capitalism and communism. Over time, the Germans grew tired of being divided. They wanted to be one country again. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, symbolizing the end of the Cold War. 2 years later, Germany was reunited. But that doesn't mean that the Germans forgot about their past. Today, Germany has one of the strongest economies in the world. They are a leader in innovation and technology. Germany also plays an active role in European politics. They're one of the founding members of the EU and the Eurozone. But Germany has not forgotten the horrors of the past. After all, 2 world wars started on German soil. Today, the Germans are pacifists. They know the importance of peace and stability. That is why Germany spends very little on defense. This makes sense because Germany is surrounded by NATO countries. Germany is doing quite well today. They have a thriving economy, a stable democracy, and a bright future ahead of them. Let us not forget that it hasn't always been this way. In just 1 century, Germany went from being a unified empire to being divided between communism and democracy, all while causing 2 world wars. What does this tell us? It tells us that history can change in an instant. But it also tells us that we should learn from the past. We should never repeat the mistakes of the 20th century.